All right, let's welcome in TSN's Frank Corrado to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Frankie, great to have you back on the program. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. Like, I know it might be a little bit of a touchy subject right now in Winnipeg, asking anyone how they're doing, because I know what happened to the Bombers, but the Jets are playing good, so you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, thank God for the hockey team. There's a lot of disappointed Winnipeg sports fans coming out of the hammer on Sunday. Got a couple days to sort of mope around. Tell you what, coming off that homestand 4-1 where the Jets sit in the standings right now, this team's given Winnipeg fans a lot of reasons to be optimistic and frankly excited. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yes, and you know what? Going into the season, I thought it could have gone either way for Winnipeg. And to be honest with you, I was probably more on the pessimistic side with this team, just with the way things ended last year. I don't know. There was just something about it. It had like a little odor to it. And, Rick Bowness, his comments last year after the playoffs, it's like there's just something not right there. And I give those guys a lot of credit. The players in the room, the coaching staff, the general manager, I give everyone a lot of credit there because they decided that wasn't going to be the story for them. And this season, I think a lot of that comes from getting Scheifele and Hellebuyck locked up. And now everyone in that room kind of knows the direction of the team. And they've carried that through here. Like they're playing hockey that I would describe as hard to play against hockey. They can kind of roll all their lines at you, and whoever's hopping over the boards is playing with a purpose and understanding what their job and objective is, and they've got everyone bought in that way. And they've improved in other categories that last year you saw, and you're like, there's something there, but you guys, as a team, they couldn't really find it. Like the one area for me that I always thought last year was that it would be like a rush opportunity offensively, and then that would be it. And then there would be no sustained offensive zone pressure because of that. And I'm thinking you guys got you got big bodies there that can kind of grind you down low. Like, how are we not converting these rush chances into more in zone chances? And I'm watching them this year and I'm thinking, well, they found a way to do that. And whatever it is, how if it's the way the lines are configured or just understanding there's a little more emphasis on trying to wear teams down, I think they do a really good job of that. So what started out as a somewhat pessimistic season in my eyes has really turned into an optimistic season. And I think the Jets right now they're a hard team to play against, and they're a tough out against some really good teams. They're a really good team.
Frank, you mentioned the extensions of Scheifele and Hellebuyck, and I know we're sort of caught in the minutia of the day-to-day, but, I mean, you've played in the league before. This team had massive questions all offseason, and they really weren't answered as we got into training camp. I think there was a sense that Mark Scheifele was probably going to be playing part of his final season and would likely be moved. And certainly when we heard from Connor Hellebuyck, he was pretty clear that, he was looking to win a Stanley Cup. And then 4 days later, they're signing identical deals for the same amount to stay here long term. As a player, if you're in that room going into a season where, as you mentioned, there might have been a bit of an odor from last year, to use your term, which I think was very appropriate, what does that do to a team that has also named a new captain and a guy like Adam Lowry, who has been everything that they hoped for and more? How much of the psychological boost does a team get? And how much of an effect do you think that's had on the way that they've been playing, which has been quite consistently night in and night out?
Yeah, it's a good point, because it's almost like when there's things that are looming over a team, and as much as players will always say, yeah, we're just focused on what we can control and, the day-to-day, whatever. You have to take that with a grain of salt, because I think guys will look at certain things and be like, well, that's looming over our heads. What direction is that going to go in? Are they, are people sticking around here? Are we a team that's trying to go for something? Are we for real? Or are we going to be a team that at some point this season, if player A and player B leave, is there going to be other guys on expiring contracts leaving? Are they going to try and, retool this thing on the fly? And once you get those two contracts done with Scheifele and Hellebuyck, I think all the other guys in the room kind of look at that and say, no, there's no quit here. There's no giving up. And anyone who thought that, you're sadly mistaken. And so we have something that we're going to set out to accomplish this year. And quite frankly, Like it might even add a little bit of like an extra motivation to say like, hey, anyone who like counted us out, we thought we weren't going to be a good team, like we're going to show you guys. And I think the Adam Lowry captaincy thing has been brilliant. And sometimes teams will really just get caught up on this. Well, so-and-so is our best player, or so-and-so has been here the longest, and he gets a lot of points, and we're going to upset him if we don't make him the captain. I think what they did with Lowry is they named a guy captain who really sets the tone for how they want to approach things and the mindset and demeanor of the team. Like the last Jets panel I did, this guy fought twice. Like he really is like, I don't know. It seems like he's a guy that just leads by example, and it's to a different extent. Like the best players sometimes are the hardest working players. And I think when that happens, everyone needs to fall in line. We know Adam Lowry is obviously not like a superstar skilled player, but when he's your captain and he's out there and he's doing that kind of stuff and he's putting it on the line, his body on the line, and he's working very hard at it, everyone else looks at that and says, man, this guy's in the trenches. Like we got to be in the trenches right there with him. Like he's the guy leading the way. So it kind of like it adds some accountability and some credibility within the group, having a guy like that do his thing. I've been really impressed with him, and it's important to have like a vision as far as where the franchise is going to go. Just quickly, like, the Canucks the last few years, they haven't had that vision, right? They've been kind of in this like middle ground where it's like, do they retool? Do they rebuild? They're making these trades, trading first round picks. What are they doing? Like they've come out this year and they've established what they're all about, and they're probably getting a little more of the attention. But for me, the Winnipeg Jets are right there, and they deserve every bit, if not more attention than the Vancouver Canucks. They've been that good this year.
And we'll get to Lowry's line and, a breakdown you did of just about the way the team is playing. But I did want to ask you about Mark Scheifele, and I guess we can include Kyle Connor. But Scheifele in particular, because of all the noise around him for the last couple of seasons, signing that contract, and, in a lot of ways, maybe it is in a lot of ways following the lead of Adam Lowry. Everything else is in the background for Mark Scheifele now. He's got his contract. If that was an issue, which I think many people thought that it was for a while, that is done. He's committed here. It's about going out, winning hockey games, and helping your team win. And I think most people would agree we've seen as engaged a Mark Scheifele as we have in a very, very long time. And I think Kyle Connor's following that lead as well. These guys are never going to be up for the Selke Trophy or anything like that, but the fact that they're doing more in some of the areas where they could improve, I think has really helped them in the offensive zone. And all you need to do is look at what that line's done over the course of the past 3 weeks and who's at the top of the scoring leaders to tell you all you need to know about how productive they've been.
Yeah, and I would even say not everyone's cut out to be a captain. Like it's not in everyone's genetic DNA to have that kind of leadership position. And that's okay. Like if you're not in that position, then you're not the one that's bearing that responsibility, and all eyes are not on you. And it's okay for star players, so-called faces of your team, to kind of have like a primary position when it comes to what they contribute on the ice, but maybe a secondary kind of role when it comes to leadership. And that's okay. Like some guys are just wired that way, where it's like they're leaders. People seem to follow them. It doesn't seem unnatural. It just seems like it's right within their wheelhouse, and they have this persona about them. And some guys just don't have that. Some guys are really really just involved in the day-to-day of what they do to be a good hockey player. They show up to the rink, they got their own stretching routine they got to do, they got their own workout they got to do, and it's like they just don't have it in them to kind of be the one who organizes this and that within the group and address people. It's just like, it's okay for some guys to just go out there, play their game, be really good at it, be a good teammate, and kind of leave it at that. So understanding that and utilizing players' personalities in the best way possible is obviously advantageous for your team. And maybe this year with the Jets, having Lowry be the guy, that's that true leader that everyone seems to follow, and having Scheifele, kind of a little more, let's say, freed up to just play hockey. Just play hockey. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff because people are going to follow Lowry's lead. You can follow his lead, and you can play great hockey on the first line, and that's what they're doing. And I would say, like with Scheifele, Like, we're the same age, so we played against each other in the OHL. And there was a time where this probably around, I don't know, 2016, 2017 season, like, people were talking about this guy being one of the best, young centermen, up-and-comers in the league. And, if you follow that trajectory, I think you got to be in the same category as some of the greats that are still playing. He's obviously not in that category, but he's still pretty damn good. And he's a number one centerman on a lot of teams around the NHL. And with the way things are kind of looking, with the way this team is shaping up this year, there's more depth at other positions. Like, Velarde's going to be back soon. Iafallo's been a great addition. I think even, the fourth line has been thin and kind of injury riddled at times, but even that Kupari adds a little element there. So the fact that they've been able to kind of spread some pieces around the lineup has really helped him just kind of focus in on, okay, I need to go out there. I need to win my shift. I don't need to do anything more than that, because everyone else is kind of contributing what they need to do during a game. And right now the Jets have that right recipe.
It's an interesting segue into talking about Adam Lowry's line, and you talk about leading by example. Early on in the season, that Lowry line was many nights kind of carrying the Winnipeg Jets. And for a team, when you look at all the metrics and analytics, they have been great at 5-on-5. I mean, a big step up consistently from where they'd been in the past. And in a lot of ways, it sort of started with that line. We mentioned that breakdown you did a week or so ago about the Winnipeg Jets just bringing it for 3 straight shifts, starting with that Lowry line, turning into a goal about a minute later where the opposition wasn't able to get a change in. Niederreiter's been a great addition. Mason Appleton's playing the best hockey of his career. Lowry's in the middle. How much of an effect does it have on a team when you have a quote-unquote bottom 6 line giving it to their opponents the way that line has done? And what does that do for guys in the top 6 following them out over the boards?
Well, I call that line a setup line. For me, it's like those guys go over the boards. They'll play a little bit in the offensive zone. They'll cycle the puck a little bit. And if you can catch another team in the second period on a long change, now it's up to the coach to recognize that there's some tired bodies on there and throw your first line over the boards. And, credit to the coaching staff with Scott Arniel. He's done that quite a bit, and it's paid off for them. So having that line as the setup line is really important for the team. And it's not going to happen every time. But if it can happen a few times in a night where you see that line kind of do their thing and set you up to get your skilled players against some tired bodies, I mean, that's better than a lot of other third lines around the league that are maybe playing in their own zone or struggling to get the puck a little bit. I don't know, they're winning a lot of the shift battles, if you want to call it that they're out against. Someone asked me last week, was the Dallas Stars third line the best third line in hockey? And I guess Tyler Seguin and Mason Marchment, and I can't remember who else is on that line, but it's a very good one. It's one of the best lines in the league. My argument with the Jets line being better than them is that's the Jets one is like a prototypical third line, where the guys on the Stars, that line could get broken up because you need someone on the second line or someone on the first line or someone's not going. It's like these guys are what they are. They know exactly what makes them good. And the 3 of them together, they're not just – another thing that impressed me is they're not just big bodies that just chip the puck in and go chase it and hammer a body and the other team breaks the puck out and away we go. We try and do it all over again. There was a game against Nashville where those guys scored a beautiful goal off the rush, and it's like Niederreiter makes a really nice play at the blue line where he could have easily just chipped it in and gone and chased it down, but it's like, wait a second, we're big bodies. We actually have some skill too. And I think that it went to Lowry, and Lowry made a nice play in the middle to Appleton. And then the punchline of it all was 3 massive guys kind of converging on the net at the same time, and the puck goes in. And I'm thinking right there, I'm like, man, that's a coach's dream to have a third line like that. That's a player's dream, because, if I'm, what I was as a player was usually a third pair defenseman in the NHL. If I'm on the ice with those guys a lot throughout the course of the night, I'm so happy, because I know that those guys can make a play, especially on the wall. But they can also like hem the puck in offensively. So for me, as a third pair guy with my kind of limitations, I guess, if you want to call it that, I know I'm going on the ice with some guys that are going to chew up some clock and play in the offensive zone. Now I'm having fun instead of picking the puck out of my net. So it's I mean, it's been a very impressive line right from the start of the season. And, you joke around with guys like, there was always some bigger guys and, you joke around with their skill level and say like, look at you, making that play. Like, that's a nice play. And every once in a while you'd get a guy who goes, and he can fight. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. And you can fight. So that's like, that's the thing about Lowry on that line. You want to call their bluff. He'll pound your face in.
Frankie Corrado of TSN with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Jets line 2, very different. Nikolai Ehlers is kind of back to where we remembered him last season, kind of missed training camp, had a slow start. But really the revelation, I think, has been Cole Perfetti and how productive he's been night in and night out. And it's interesting, Frank, he started in the middle, and then with the Velarde injury, after about 3 games, he was moved to the wing, and Metstikov, who's kind of a human Swiss Army knife, has come in and played the middle. Now, I anticipate Velarde coming back and being on line 2 to begin when he returns from injury some point in the next week. But from your perspective, what have you seen from Cole and the step that he's taken forward productivity-wise, and the challenges for him, whether, I guess the differences from having him on the wing, where he really has been successful, to potentially moving back into the middle at some point going forward?
I just think he's a very smart player. He's an intelligent player. And I'm not going to use the word cerebral because I don't know if I've told you guys this story, but I had used that word, and someone, in the hockey world reached out to me and said, Google what cerebral means. And it said like, like something along the lines of like unemotional in how they play, or it was something along the lines of that, like intelligent, but like not emotional. And I'm like, we have to stop using that word, because you can only play hockey with emotion and with passion. You can't just like think your way around the ice without that. So, but he's a very intelligent player. I think like when the puck is on his stick, he gets a lot of like good puck touches. Like, it seems like when Perfetti has it, he's always able to like calm the puck down. It doesn't seem like it's like this rush to get the puck off his stick. And it's impressive for a young player to kind of have that poise already at such a young age. So it's a poised game. It's a smart game. And just understanding like the intricacies of, he'll kind of make his way higher in the zone, in the offensive zone. And, he's in a good defensive position. But that also allows him to be in a good offensive position, because there's a lot of times where he can kind of attack down towards the net. And I've seen him have some success that way. So, I mean, he's just kind of learning the league, but it's almost like he's figuring it out pretty quickly, and he can handle the ice time. I know early in the season, the ice time wasn't really there for him, but as far as the ice time that they've given him, for me, like, he's handled everything quite well. And I don't find he's ever really out of his depth. Like, I find that he's, pretty calm and pretty poised, whether it's with the puck or without it.
17 games into the season, this team has been great at 5-on-5, very consistent. The power play is rolling again. Kyle Connor's at the top of the league goal-scoring leaders. I think we all agree that there's another level for Connor Hellebuyck, and with that, the penalty kill should improve. A penalty kill that was top 10 in the league last year. I mean, what's the ceiling, do you think, for the Winnipeg Jets right now, based on what you've seen through 17 games?
Well, here's the thing. At some point, you have to be evaluated with your peers. And if they're, tied with Colorado, I haven't checked the standings this morning, but if they're tied with Colorado or they're a point back of Dallas, it's like, well, we have to take them for what they are. Like, we get to a point in the season where you are what the standings say you are. It's obviously still early, so it remains to be seen if they're able to keep that up. And I think the other thing to keep in mind with this team is the fall from grace they had last year. I don't think a lot of us were expecting that, and it wasn't pretty basically from, February onward through the rest of the year. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But I'll always say this when you have a goaltender like they do. You go into a series and like they're gonna play. I don't know who they would play in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, it'd be Colorado. They're tied right now, second and third, and they're both 3 points back at Dallas.
Okay, so they'd have to go up against Colorado. That would be very difficult, but you probably know you're going to have the goaltending matchup there. So I guess my point is, like, there's a lot of series where they're going to have the better goalie. And so that's always going to help them when it comes to playoff time. But listen, the ceiling for this team has to be considered who they're around in the standings. And if they're right there with Colorado and they're not far behind from Dallas, like both those teams, you talk to a lot of people, they're considered Stanley Cup favorites. It's up to them to obviously prove that they can keep up with those teams and not fall behind. But if they do, we have to take them seriously. It's not like, I find it so interesting when it comes to making predictions and talking about what the ceiling is for teams in the NHL. It's like we can only say there's like a handful of teams that are legit contenders, but there's a lot of other teams that are right near those teams when it comes to the standings. That it seems like it's voodoo to talk about a team that like has not come out of nowhere, but a team that's been a pleasant surprise when it comes to winning a Stanley Cup. I don't know. Maybe they can be that team that it's like, hey, we hung around with the best teams in the league, the teams that we thought were, a lot of people thought were Stanley Cup favorites for a long portion of the season. We should be considered in that category. I'm not willing to say that quite yet because there still is some hockey to be played, and we need to see what the regression looks like for this team. But they're a really good team, and I think a lot of people should be paying attention to the Jets this season.
You mentioned the swoon that the team took in the second half last season, and that's not the first time that sort of trend has happened with Winnipeg. If you look back at the last 4 or 5 years, considering the fact that has happened before, how do you think that shapes them and their focus when you get into the second half of the season and you're going through that period again? I mean, does that make it less likely to happen because you're prepared for it? You know what's happened in the past?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because there's some bodies that aren't there anymore that were prominent players, right? And I'm talking about Wheeler and Dubois, obviously. They're not in the mix anymore. So I wonder if it's more of one of those things where this new group that's led by Adam Lowry just kind of doesn't even pay any attention to that. It's like that doesn't even exist anymore. It's like we got our thing going here. There's a new mindset with this team. We're having a great season. Everyone's playing well. The good individual performances are leading to good team performances, and we're not even touching that. We're not thinking about it. We're not going there. It's not something that's indicative of this group this season. So like if I were around, that's kind of the way I would be thinking about it. I think that's the best way to go about it. I don't think anyone is, when you're playing well, there's no one sitting around saying, oh, when's it coming? Like, when's it coming? When are we going to go through the tough times? No one's ever thinking that. Everyone's just thinking, let's keep this show on the road. Let's keep the pedal to the metal, and let's be the best team we possibly can be. And then when you are in those moments, when it does come, that's when it's up to the leadership group to kind of, I would just say, like, of course you want to keep everyone's mind right, but it's more about the on-ice stuff. Like, you can say so much in a dressing room and have all the meetings you want. If it doesn't happen on the ice, then those are just words and they don't mean anything. So, you can have all the meetings, but at the end of the day, it was up to the players last year. It was up to the players in the past, and it's going to be up to the players this season when that time comes to kind of buck that trend and keep things going in the right direction. Every team in the NHL is going to have a moment in time throughout the season where it's going to be a struggle for them, where if you're a really good team, maybe you play 500 hockey for 10, 12 games. Like, it's just up to you to not turn that into, 2-7-1 hockey for 10 games. Like that'll be the challenge for them. But I don't know, like from what I've seen from this group this season, it seems like it's pretty attainable for them to, if they were going through a down part of the season, play some 500 hockey and then just get back to, the quality hockey they're playing now.
Frank, it's interesting you mentioned that because I did want to ask you about, sort of the identity of a team and the team itself as a group. Listen, we knew what they were dealing with Dubois, basically having one foot out the door for the last couple of years, and all the noise with Blake Wheeler last year, having lost the captaincy. Those guys are gone right now. And listen, I think Wheeler was certainly committed to Winnipeg, and listen, he was bought out. Dubois, a little different. Rick Bowness really hammered this through to everybody through training camp and early on in the season, that everybody that is wearing a Winnipeg Jet jersey is committed and wants to be here. Listen, we know this isn't LA, this isn't New York. There has been some players that have looked to get out before. From a team perspective and a guy in that room, how beneficial is it knowing that you're looking around and you don't have guys that are calling their agent after every practice to see if there's any movement on maybe they're leaving?
For me, it comes down to winning. Like, if you're winning games, it's fun going to the rink every day. It's fun, like, hanging out with the guys. And it doesn't necessarily matter where you're playing, because, you know, you're focused on this one collective goal that everyone's bought in on, and everyone's really chummy, and it's a great time. And you enjoy going to the rink. You could play for a team in warm weather, and everyone hates each other, and the team sucks, and you lose, and you hate going to the rink, and you can't wait to get out of the rink and just go home and sit by the pool. And it's like, that's not healthy either. You know, at the end of the day, as a hockey player, your purpose is to be the best hockey player you can possibly be so your team can win. And that's the ultimate goal. And if your team is winning and you're going to the rink every day and it's a great time, and that's, you know, like, you're filling out your purpose, and you feel like you're involved in something that's bigger than you. And that's always going to take, priority over signing somewhere so you can kind of look at some palm trees on a day-to-day. And you know what? I would say, if you play in a place like Winnipeg, the fans really appreciate you. They appreciate the hockey. And, you know, the road trips, when you do get to go somewhere nice and warm, you get to do it with a great group of guys that are all, you know, are loving life and winning hockey games. So it's not all bad. It's just, your purpose is to win games. And when you're winning games and your game is in a good place and you're going to the rink, doesn't matter where you're playing, because you feel like you're in a good place mentally.
Well, and you know all about playing in microscopes in Canadian hockey markets, and when it's good, it's good. But when things aren't going well, there's a lot that comes with that as well.